Hi, I'm Mike Van Wambeke, a teacher at Robinson Secondary School, and today I wanted to talk to you about a letter that Lincoln wrote to General George B. McClellan in the spring of 1862. This particular source is connected with the Peninsula Campaign, which represent one of the first major Union initiatives to go on the offensive against the southern capital of Richmond. The letter is significant because it serves as both a response to McClellan's request for more troops and materiel, as well as an outline for what Lincoln sees to be crucial for the success of his campaign in general. In order to understand Lincoln's position on these two issues, we have to look first at the background to this particular letter. 3 days prior to Lincoln's dispatch, McClellan sent his own note to the president, where he complained that he lacked the materials to, quote, move his army even a few miles, end quote. He continued, stating that, quote, the enemy is strong in my front, and I have a most serious task before me. I again repeat the request that General Franklin and his division be restored to my command, end quote. The tone of this letter, coupled with a second telegram sent to Franklin in Alexandria soon after the dispatch was sent to Lincoln, suggests a certain level of urgency and immediacy for McClellan that he expects Lincoln to act upon. And why would Lincoln willingly deny his general the tools necessary to achieve success and prevent disaster? In responding to McClellan, Lincoln is placed in a very tough position. Part of his problem rests in not wanting to undermine a popular figure within the Union Army. According to historian Ethan Rafuse, when McClellan first arrived in Washington, everyone was, quote, willing to do as he bids. The president confides in him, and the people trust him, end quote. Moreover, he was popular with his own troops, which would add difficulty for Lincoln in countermanding McClellan's orders or directives. However, Lincoln also had to balance this popularity with the misgivings people were beginning to have for McClellan. According to Stephen Sears in his book, To the Gates of Richmond, the Peninsula Campaign, many radical Republicans believed that McClellan's plan to move the army down the Chesapeake was simply a bid to expose Washington to rebel attack. They pointed to McClellan's connection with Jefferson Davis when Davis had been the Secretary of War, and made other allegations about possible connections with Southern pro-slavery groups. So in some ways, Lincoln's opening in this letter that McClellan's requests, while they do not offend him but still pain him greatly, encapsulate the struggle Lincoln faces when dealing with his general. McClellan feels that he does not have the troops necessary to wage war against the South, but Lincoln's counter is that McClellan's original plans for the defense of Washington were woefully inadequate, with the general having left fewer than, quote, 20,000 unorganized men without a single field battery, end quote. While Lincoln's wartime goal may be the defeat of Southern armies and a restoration of the Union, he cannot stand for an easy opening for Confederate troops to take the capital. The consequences and humiliation of an event like that, possibly bringing to mind the British burning of the White House during the War of 1812, is not something Lincoln will allow, and he explains to McClellan, quite patiently it seems, why he made the troop diversions that he did. We can, however, see Lincoln's frustration with his general when he says that his orders for the security of Washington had, quote, been neglected. Other presidents would have relieved McClellan for ignoring these orders, but Lincoln displays a patience that is admirable given the circumstances. The frustration with McClellan goes even deeper, though. In the course of this note, Lincoln chides his general for discrepancy, a, quote, curious mystery of 23,000 troops that had been placed under McClellan's command that had simply gone missing in a numbers report. Moreover, Lincoln criticizes McClellan's oversight to leave an appropriate force at Manassas Junction, stating that he had to substitute his own plan when none was provided. Once again, these are not small oversights. They reveal, at the very least, a beginning of a breakdown of trust between Lincoln and his general. One of the interesting things about Lincoln that is revealed in this letter is his willingness to act as a true commander-in-chief despite very little military experience of his own. James McPherson mentions how Lincoln had to take his own crash course in military history and would study up on the relevant literature in order to better handle the course and direction of the war. We see evidence of this at work a bit further on, when Lincoln mentions to McClellan that delaying a strike will allow the enemy to, quote, gain faster by fortifications and reinforcements than you, McClellan, can by reinforcements alone, end quote. Similarly, Lincoln notes that the premise behind the whole campaign would only be, quote, shifting and not surmounting a difficulty, end quote. Lincoln states quite clearly that he does not want a repeat of what happened at Manassas, and his urging of McClellan to strike reveals at least some understanding of why action, and not location, matters most at this point of the war. The end of the letter, much like the beginning, reveals the conflicted feelings of Lincoln. He begins the final paragraph by stating, quote, I beg to assure you that I have never written you or spoken to you and greater kindness of feeling than now, nor with a fuller purpose to sustain you, so far as in my most anxious judgment I consistently can." End quote. It seems here that Lincoln is trying to temper his impatience with a sincere respect of McClellan's person and character, and works to show he has some level of continued confidence in the general. But he ends the letter with something quite direct, stating baldly, quote, "But you must act." End quote. The statement wonderfully condenses the entire letter into the crux of the whole issue. It is inactivity more than anything else that irks Lincoln. Issues with troops or battlefield locations would likely be irrelevant had McClellan delivered a swift victory rather than cautiously moving along the peninsula. McClellan would ultimately be removed from command in the aftermath of Antietam several months after this letter was written. Essentially, Lincoln had a general who was not playing to win, just simply playing to avoid defeat. Lincoln's commander at Gettysburg, Major General George Meade, aptly summed up Lincoln's frustrations with his general by saying that, quote, "McClellan was always waiting to have everything just as he wanted before he would attack, and before he could get things arranged as he wanted them, the enemy pounced on him and thwarted all his plans. Such a general will never command success, though he may avoid disaster." In McClellan, Lincoln had found a general that helped get the North organized. But it is clear by the end of this letter that any confidence Lincoln might have had in his commander to do something momentous was quickly fading.